Welcome, everybody. Welcome. We wait for some more listeners. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to play music because I'm on the phone and it's not working with Windows 11 on the laptop. So it's a mess. I'm sorry about that, Desperado, but it's impossible to play with any good sound at this moment in time. I will try to solve the technical issues there, but it's quite crazy. And well, we have to sing the birthday song now a little bit later on. Let's see if there comes some English speaking people. Let's hope so. That's the purpose of this, more or less. If not, we just switch to Swedish. It's uh, it's very early or very late, depending on where in the US you are. But this is the ordinary time where we hit the central time at least, or decent time for the US people. So, oh, Brian, welcome. Defect, very welcome to you as well. We hang around for a little bit. I'm gonna give Brian a mic here. Invite to speak. Yay. There we go. Hopefully, this is sort of, you know, it's well, it's been a few years now, Brian, hasn't it? It's been a few years. It's like 3 years
It's too
ago we
long.
started out. Welcome, Brian. I'm happy to see
Yes,
you.
yes,
And
indeed. How are you? Can you hear me okay? Can you
yep, I'm okay. Still standing. Still standing. Still standing. Uh, it's a rough ride, but it's also a very beautiful ride. So it's both of them on the personal level. But do you
Yes,
remember how
sir.
long?
3 years now. It's
3 years. 3 years, and we've gone through the banking, the U.S. banking, in correlation to. But now it's like I think the timing, the time people are getting more interested and trying to understand why the fuck things are like they are, or how fooled they have been, how easily they have been fooled into where they are today. And I think many people are thinking about this on a deeper level actually these days than before, because now it sort of it hurts all over the place. We're done with the pandemic. We're done with so many things. So uh, today we are sort of, this is, well, it's not the birthday celebration, but it's it's the birthday of the first very very conclusive step to where we are today. And actually, the framework, the setup, has not changed since 1668 when it comes to the central banking. It has just developed. It have not really changed anything more than pure technological. The mind game is still the same. They even tried before setting this up. They even tried the fiat money with the dollar, aka the dollar, the OG dollar, so to speak, the Swedish dollar that later on became the dollar. It's like uh, well, you really don't. Sorry, I muted. Sausage fingers. Um, it's it is a strange thing, Brian, isn't it? I think that people will listen a little bit more now. The smaller voices are getting through bit by bit, the younger generation, up to, let's say, 30, 35, 15 to 35. They're getting it. They're you know, enough of the younger generation are getting it now. So we will just walk through it straight on, very point by point, and then we can take some questions and so on. So I will do what I can, and of course this is a recorded space. So I will do what I can to make it short and sweet. And of course, I would like to have some more people in. So please retweet the space, get some people in, and we will, of course, do a very proper Q&A as soon as we go. So Brian, uh, what what are where are the winds blowing in the US? Yeah, of course the Swedish
Um,
export Antifa is where the National Guard is sent out to. Yeah, there's a lot of theatrical moves made right now.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think in my opinion, we're seeing the first drawing ties of um, let's call it pinching off a few arteries. All right, when you draw the string around an artery and cut the flow off, in certain ways, certain. Okay, so we just watched Berkshire Hathaway has made a full pull out of China, um, which is rather well. It did what it did for a long time. So 37 years they were in China on BYD. So anyway, um, let's see. Palantir is making huge moves. Google also, these Microsoft, the deals that are being made, the Trump deal between the US and the UK, the UK actually getting Brexit. I mean, there's so many things have changed hands. So many people have been removed, and now going forward with people that will more agree with them. Um, yeah, it's taken
Yeah,
the corporate world is showing its ugly face, is it not?
yeah, it really does. It really does. We cannot at this moment in time say that these are the bad guys, that the technocrats, let's say the new technocrats coming up now, or new, they are not new, but they are in given tremendous power now. I'm thinking about Peter Thiel, Jim O'Neill,
Tremendous
and
power. And you
tremendous,
see
tremendous.
the problem with that right now at this present time, Mr. Martin. I yes, the history, but you asked me about what's going on right now, how things are going. Well, um, we're looking at a couple of executive orders that are about to roll out. Trump made an announcement yesterday and or over the weekend, and he's going to make an announcement today and through this week and tell us about autism and how bad it is. They have an answer for certain things, and he said that the public would be really surprised and see what he said in previous little statements and speeches that he's given live. He said that they did make the vaccine and that Operation Warp Speed was the greatest thing that's ever happened to the world. All right, to our country and to the world. And when he said that, also, there was a lot of things that reflected in my mind there, and Operation Warp Speed moving forward and continuing on now. I think he's actually sided with the corporations in these endeavors. And I think they're going to move forward with a formal accusing of the people, and um, that it'll,
Uh,
that will be to blame for it. So we'll see. I don't know that that's what he's going to do. He might, depending on what they tell us, but he's going to make an announcement on it. And I don't think it's going to favor us. I know that he's very much in
no.
favor of the corporations. He is the corporate leader, and
Yeah.
we'll
I
see
mean, he's a
how
corporate guy.
this goes.
He's a corporate. He's a corporate guy, So that should come natural for him to join up with these guys. You cannot really tell. That's the problem. He goes both ways, so to speak.
Well, tell me your thoughts, right quick. One question to you. Tell me your thoughts on BlackRock. What did you think about Larry Fink taking over the WEF, the World
Well,
Health Organization? Please give me a thought on that, because that terrified me. I didn't want those running it, like, Klaus Schwab, all of them, right? So we needed them to calm down and cool off and back off, and now.
it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. I am quite more afraid of Mr. Fink than of Mr. Schwab. We all know that Schwab is the protege of Kissinger. He is also the son of Eugen Schwab, who is, of course, a Nazi and a very close business partner, very essential business partner to the Wallenbergs. Actually, without Schwab's father, the possibility for the Wallenbergs to hand over the nuclear weapon for the White Hand, aka the US, to the Manhattan Project, because that is what they did. This is not even hidden anymore. The historians are saying this out loud these days, because the history is shown now. The documents are released and so on. So there's no doubt about that the Wallenbergs is handing through Lisa Meitner, which is in their custody, the secret of the nuclear weapon to the Manhattan Project, where her friends already are since, a decade before almost. It is strange. Very few people living in the US even consider that to be a possibility, because they are Hollywoodified or Oppenheimer believers or whatever. There's no coincidence that the Oppenheimer movie came out. Actually, the Lisa Meitner movie came out also, but none of them tell the truth. They touch on it, but they don't they don't say it straight out. It's not even close. They are just it's a counter move from the hidden hand, from probably, you know uh, from the Wallenbergs. You don't know these guys. The Wallenbergs in this generation, they are as secretive as Trump is, because cannot tell. You cannot tell for sure. But what we can tell for sure, Brian, is the banking history, and that will point in a certain direction. So we at least know how we have been conned with the Ponzi scheme that is way ahead of any other Ponzi scheme scam ever. It's the largest scam, as we say in the headline, in the world history.
Okay. All right, just right quick, let me throw one more question at you. We'll let you get started. I would love to hear you go through this, and I'll listen in. And, anytime if you want me to chime in on anything, I will be glad to, or I can just listen either way. But I'm going to throw this one more question at you, and it's up to you. Whenever you want to start, or we can continue back and forth. I would love to hear more of your thoughts. But J.P. Morgan Chase is going to move headquarters back to London. Wow. Tell me your
City,
thoughts
city
on that.
of the plot. The safe space created by a Viking. We will actually get there in this history very soon because that one comes pretty early in the neck of the woods of the history. So that will probably explain or answer your question when we walk through the history while they are moving to that certain area. This is like go- escaping Delaware. Uh,
Wow.
go to the
Man.
And we're talking about JP Morgan. We are talking, when we start talking about this guy, we're talking about the Fed. We also will, of course, mention American IG, Swedish IG. Morgan is one of the leading figures of in that time. We will get there. I will do a quick history review this time. So I'm happy for the warm up and. Re- let's say that we will get there very, very quickly, actually. So I will step into it now. And if there are any more speakers that actually want to grab a mic, please do so. And you are at any moment in time welcome to put out questions or whatever. But I will do my rant first, and it will be not so long-winded. I'm checking the clock here, 21:33 Mordorian time, and it will be about 15 minutes or so. I try to stick to that. So one rainy day in the Viking Age, the early Viking Age, and this is the early. People don't call it the Viking Age. I call it the Viking Age because where does it begin? Where does it end? There is a former Roman legionnaire, captain, lieutenant, whatever he wants succeeded to be, called Arminius or Hermann Denkmal. He wanted to liberate his part of northern Germany from the Romans. So he went to the southern part of Sweden because there were some pretty good fighters there called the Longobards. He connected with these guys and said, I want to beat the Romans. I know how to do it because I know how they operate and so on. And I have a deal to make you whatever. So said and done. They actually went and they defeated. They threw them out. And this is around year 14. These Longobards, they had a pretty good social skills as well, pretty good laws, pretty good, rule. And when that was done, they simply marched to south and picked up a lot of people that liked their way of living, liked their freedom of religion, the kind of how they worked, how they operated. So around year 200, they had built up a very, very strong force, and they simply conquered without any really big battles. They simply conquered Italy. They formed a society there together with the Italians. New law and order came to be. Venice flourished because the first kind of banking, which is more like it was more like today's uh, 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 foreign exchange market. You could say. So the word bank, as we know it, this is the first time it's used because the Longobards, speaking the northern languages, which, by the way, Tolkien also speak fluently. Later on, of course, many centuries later on. So the word bank is bank in Swedish, or still same word. and that is what they are using in Venice to do the trade. If you wanted to do the exchange of gold for silver and so on, with primarily the Asians, because the Asians wanted uh, silver and they paid with gold. This is the main source of where the bank you could have at this exchange market. And if you take a look at the map, that's the most strategical and lively port with the shortest route. If you go, they're all land transportation at this time as well. So it's the shortest route to take anything uh, into Europe, up north or whatever. Venice is very strategical place. It's easy to defend and so on. This is where the bank for the first time is noted as a function. We move.
Would you also agree with me that it's a that would they did they consider it back then to be a sort of a data bank or like a node? I mean, how would you think they considered it back then? Would that have been like the first step towards a data bank of record, or
Yeah, they kept records, of course, and that actually made Italy flourish. You know, that the economy boomed in Italy. Italy was not that, you know, and that gave a little bit later on, a couple of centuries later on, they allowed uh, the popery to have their small regions where they could do their popery stuff, whatever, you know, the religious, because they had the freedom of religion. So the Longobards were, you know, you could say, looking in the rear view mirror, that was a mistake. The popes or the pope made a deal around year 800 with Charlemagne, uh, Karl den Store for the Swedish audience, and said that they will canonize him if he just beat the Longobards and give them the power of Italy and so on. And he did. He actually had a great military overtake or advantage with his newly invented armored horsemen and so on. That's sort of the beginning of the knight thing that will, you know, come a little bit later on. But that's so. Because there's been peace, you know, for so long that the Longobards, you know, and they're mixed up with they were not really the great fighters that they once were. So Longobards, that's Lombardy. It's named after them. That was sort of their main region, and that's the biggest region in Italy as well. So from Charlemagne beating the Longobards, then the Vikings now have on their half, so to speak, the northern half. They have the control of the Baltic. Uh, they have control of the Dnieper. They have control of the waterways. This has been true history. The Vikings were very keen on and very skillful in controlling the waterways. Even Sen going to Paris, all of the waterways, the Vikings were superior when it came to move have really fast moving ships that could move in very shallow waters. They could actually, believe it or not, carry them over obstacles and so on, and nobody matched them on the technology there at all. So they kept the advantage in shipbuilding, fast ships, and of course they were very good at spreading the rumors of how very bad they were. If they wanted to conquer some, you know, they had a reputation, but Still, they were very good warriors and so on, of course. So they sort of were very dominant at this point in time. If you look, if you listen to the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin, he actually says straight out to Tucker, and he's surprised that Tucker doesn't know that the Russians is, according to themselves, according to their history, they are from a Viking tribe with a leader called Rurik. That's their heritage. That's what they say. And Putin was really, you could, yeah, I watched the interview and so on. And you can see how surprised he is because Tucker is like Swedish or, just second generation moved to the US. So he should know. But of course, he didn't. The discussion. But the Kiev is a key point where we are now. That's why it's blue and yellow. It's been under the control of uh, uh, the Vikings in the early days, uh, and later on, it actually, they filled up this empty space when this kingdom is. And it's very essential actually for the shipping and so on. You just have to look at the map for the trade. It's very essential. So the Kiev kingdom is growing up. We have two brothers that will lose a fight down here, just a few clicks away from where I am now, uh, and that's Harald Hardrode, and his brother Olaf. So they will go. They will flee to Kiev, and Harald will do like uh, what we could call a very swift career there, and he will and be marry the princess and so on. You have this the whole story. He will even also partly during his adventures there, he will also join the Varinga Guard, which is the one that is more or less controlling uh, the emperor. I think emperor is the correct word, of the Ottomans, and of course the trade way from the Black Sea to the middle to the Mediterranean. So he will be there as well. So he knows quite a lot about this, and this is around just after year 1000 or so. At the same time, the city states are forming and being the financial motor around the Baltic Sea, and also this kind of concept with the city state. There are no countries at this point in time. There are no nations that is fully working as nations. It's city states. The city states are the ones uh, controlling the flow of goods and services and so on. And this calls out for a powerhouse building up, and that is called the Hansa. It's slowly building up, but it's growing very quickly. And at the peak, they will have hundreds of city states joining into this organization, you could call it. The thing is that when around year 1100 or so, they start. There are lots of troubles between the city states and so on, and the tradesmen, and it works pretty bad on a European scale. So they have to do something about this because they are not getting along. And this is the first time. This is sort of the let's call it the embryo of the world's first central bank, and it's in the mid 1200s or so. They decide to make a deal, a law that they have to these city states have to abide with inside the Hansa, and more or less they will straight up take the Viking law or the Swedish law coming out of the unsinkable unsinkable carrier in the Baltic Sea. That's called Gotland, and in Gotland there is a city called Visby. The laws coming out to be the Hansa laws is more or less a rip of what these guys were using. And this is like the Viking offspring. Meanwhile, before this happens, the powerhouses are shifting a little bit. We have the Viking Rollo being halfway the ruler of France to his deals and doings and so on. The French king will hire him in to protect France, but he will get the control of the Seine, the River Seine, in total. And this is Normandy, where we have the D-Day and all of this. This is Normandy. They still have the flag from this guy, okay, with his three red panthers on the yellow shield. Great Britain has always been conquered, conquested, occupied by the Vikings, and you just have to look on the shield of King Arthur, and you will know. That's the three crowns on the three yellow crowns on a blue bottom. That's about what we know about him. He's falsely scripted in history, moving forth and back hundreds of years, and not really dated into where he should be. But nevertheless, the offspring of Rollo controlling more or less the France side of it, the Baltic Sea is nothing to discuss. It's peaceful at this time. It's the Vikings are not making any war with the neighbors. They don't have to, because the trade is blooming and everything is working out fine. So the offspring of Rollo will form in 1067, the year after the big battle, when they say that the Viking era is gone, because Hardrada gets killed at the Stamford Bridge and so on, and then the Viking era is over. No, it's not. It's just a bullshit history. In 1067, William the Conqueror forms the city of London, and he also creates something called the Doomsday Book, or actually, which let's call it that the rich and famous call it the Doomsday Book. It's Facebook, more or less, or the year 1067 and forward. It's actually a ledger of who's married to who is allied with who, and so on. So he starts keeping track, informational advantage, which the Vikings have been very good at, and that's sort of a tradition, that will be brought along this trip. The most important thing here is that the Viking laws that the Hansa, this is the predecessor to the East India Company, more or less. We will get there. So what the Viking laws there is what we today could describe as admiralty law. So these city-states, they were giving, the trade rules, the rules of the sea, of commerce, the admiralty law as it's called today. And there is also put in law, in their agreement, the ability to print money under certain circumstances for these city-states. And because you have to have some kind of a system, because the trade is growing so fast at this time that you have to have a system. You have to have a monetary system of some kind because it was just a mess, and that started lots of conflicts, and ships were wrecked and not allowed into harbors, put on fire, and the tradesmen and the banksters at that time, they saw this as, oh, this is not going good. We need to have some rules here so we don't mess up. And of course, we shall be the winners when we set these rules. So that's the first time we see the ability for private banks to print money out of copper, out of it was metal money that was valued differently and so on at this point in time. But this is the first time we see that in a large scale organized. Of course, there's been this before with the Romans and with the Longobards and in Venice and so on. But this is the first time it goes very sophisticated and put into some kind of a law agreement, business agreement. It's just like today. So if we move from there, then we have the Dark Ages. This system is still working during the Dark Ages, but it's city states. It's only city states. The countryside is like the European countryside. It's just the countryside. It doesn't really have borders or any organized armies in the different states. France is like a little bit of the exception. Charlemagne is they are pretty well organized at this point in time from his heritage. So they are pretty well organized, but they really don't have these big fights or the national state armies and so on. It's professional soldiers doing uh, uh, smaller wars, you could say, protecting the trade more or less. Just to simplify, that is very simplified, but anyway. Then we get to Axel Oxenstierna, the founder of the world's first central bank. We will get to him very quickly now. So Sweden will conquer quite a good part of, because the Swedes were the first ones to forming kind of a national state army bureaucracy and so on with the predecessors to Axel Oxenstierna. They tried it out, the drafting young people to the army and so on, with some terrible battles that lots of young people killed for nothing, and they experimented with this, and also the thinking of how to make their people believe in this kind of kingdom and so on. They already had a built out system. The Vikings had a very sophisticated system for defense and for the trade with lots of agreements and deals and alarm features and so on to assemble large forces in a very fast way and so on. Uh, all the farmers and so on, they were obliged to have like three rowers, and one gunner or one arrow shot. There was very It started already then, but it developed very quickly. So Axel Oxenstierna, through his king, which is a warrior king, the Lion of Sweden, blah blah blah, they conquer quite a good chunk of Europe, especially going for the big city states where you have the big banks and so on, the banking families. He was after the banking families, and they make a good success about this. And there is a certain moment in time when Well, first of all, he needs to keep, you know, a good relation with the church and with France. So he will meet the strong man of southern of Europe under very, this is very peculiar and very odd circumstances. But to show his power, Oxenstierna will meet Richelieu. This is the first time Richelieu goes outside to the stairs of his well, church palace thing where he is situated, to meet anybody. He never does. This is the first time because he knows he got the opponent there that he needs to be keep peace with. So these two guys, and at this time, Oxenstierna will come in his carriage, and the beaten German and some other blue bloods will run after his carriage to show Richelieu that he's not fooling around. So this is an epic moment in time. I think it's 1635, something like that. Doesn't really matter. So they make a deal so they can keep the peace between them. So they sort of divide Europe between. The funny thing on those stairs, the French king is there. The Swedish king is not there. He's out fighting. He's just fighting for Oxenstierna. He's just a young fighter. He doesn't really have anything else to do. So the French king is there, but Oxenstierna and Richelieu, they speak Latin with each other, which the French king doesn't know, and just ignore him, like he's nothing. This is where this is described very thoroughly in the history books, and this is like an epic moment. Just a few years. This is just to give a point of the father of the first central bank. What kind of a guy this really is. He's you don't mess around with him. He's like he's a master at logistics, banking, the finances, and so on. In 1648, he has so tremendous pressure on the Europeans that they have the peace in Westphalia, and here is stated, and this is the first time that the national states as such is proclaimed. They have to proclaim national states because he wants that in order. He wants everybody to be like, his kind of national state is not named a national state, but it functions already like a national state. He wants to implement the same kind of bureaucracy and so on. The French is actually doing this. He and Richelieu is probably making the same moves, to keep the power of the people. So I think they make a trade-off there. So the kind of bureaucracy, which is of course a French thing, they are very good at being bureaucrats, so to speak. So this is the deal made. But here is the key factor for the forming of the central bank. You need to have national states because the central bank have to be in a national state. Otherwise, how could it be central? This is the key part. The Peace of Westphalia, 1648, the birth of the national states, by design by Oxenstierna. And just a few years later, the world's first central bank is born in Stockholm, in Sweden, in Oxenstierna's mansion, palace, whatever you want to call it. It's situated there. He has actually died, but the follow-up people, they are doing this by the book. He had given, I'm sure, very, very good instructions of how to conduct this business. So this is the story about Oxenstierna conquering Europe, making the deal with Richelieu, forming the national states, and from there on, the ticker just ticks on. It takes just a few years before in the city of London, created by William the Conqueror, the heir of the Viking Rollo, 1694, the Bank of England is formed with inside the city of London, coming back to JP Morgan. And of course, there is already some other players having their business there, such as Oxenstierna and all of these guys. You know, they moved, he makes several deals with, with the British. And most important here is that the Hansa will go to the grave in 1666. The last pieces of the Hansa organization will burn down in London. It will just vanish. Just 2 years before the central bank is formed. That had to happen because at this time the British have taken over the drive that the Dutch had for with their East India Company, which will be shattered into pieces, and the British will take that over. So at the year 1600, Queen Elizabeth, or actually she is also in straight line a Viking, and she was very proud of that. She's the heir of William the Conqueror and Rollo and so on. She is the one that starts up the largest private military company ever, which is the East India Company. And they do what they are supposed to do. They form a closed society. They have their own shipbuilding. They have their own guns. And here, as just as in the World War, and just as now, actually today, Porsche is building tanks. The armored steel, the only place that they can get this armored steel and so on in Europe is Sweden. So we are back to ground zero here, because for a military side, the military industrial complex is also being giving birth through Oxenstierna, because the lightweight cannons, which will conquer Europe, because everybody else is not mobile at all compared to this. These are needed for the East India Company to have the best battleships and also the movable forces on land. These are manufactured in Sweden by Oxenstierna at a large scale. He doesn't bother too much about the East India Company as such. He's part of it, but he's not actively doing this. There's other people doing this. He has enough with keeping conquering Europe. So at the startup it takes a little while, but the manufacturing. So we have the first embryo of the military industrial complex. We have Dutch and Englishmen building the ships. The Swedes are doing the cannons. Other what we today call nations are doing other stuff. So we see that we have a forming of a kind of a military industrial complex, which is needed because the need for battleships and also for uh, trade ships, armed trade ships, we will say that they were not unarmed, that they were is very huge, and these cannons are a very, very critical part of it. The iron, the steel is still very, very important. Otherwise, they would not have been able to do what they did. The US would not look at. And at this point in time, he works all over the place. The father of the first central bank. He managed, together with some Dutch people, actually, he hired in Dutch people and so on. He formed Delaware, where all the Fortune 100, the Fortune 500 are situated. Now, Morgan is running home, you could say, or whatever. This is strange news. We have to check this out, Brian, because it's epic if that is if they're gonna register only there to the mains. It is it's groundbreaking news actually. So Delaware is formed under his order, and this is the first state of the United States. This is also where the first weaponry will come later on, where with DuPont family, with Alfred DuPont, like in Alfred Nobel, to Alfred, same but different, at Wilmington, aka Fort Christina. So they quickly sort of take down the New Sweden thing. It's not that important, the naming of it. And also the postal service of the US will grow out of there, which is this kind of postmaster general and all of these things. That they are pretty important when it comes to the legal stuff, actually. So now we have two central banks. We have Delaware, we have Europe conquered, and the Swedes will continue. And here, as history have a tendency to repeat itself, which it does exactly at this moment in time, in real time, there will be a 21-year long war with the Russians. And Sweden will be brought to a stop, to a surrender, to a peace treaty in 1721, which is quite strange, but it is what it is. That's the one of the longest wars ever going on. It moves forth and back quite a lot, but nevertheless, the Russians will bring this one to a halt. And this is like cousins fighting, you could say, because uh, it is what it is at that point in time. Wise people that wanted freedom, the first ones that went over to the US. This is in the era here in between, in the mid 1600s. The people flow were quite high, so, in comparison. And these people, they for sure knew Oxenstierna and the central banks, and they could easily understand the purpose of the forming of national states and the central banks and so on. So they simply said, "Fuck it, I'm not gonna be in this. This will be bullshit all the way. I'm taking a chance of jumping on a small sail ship and crossing the Atlantic to get to this new country that we heard about." That's what they do. That's what they do, and this is the spirit of 1776 that is moving at this point in time, and of course to the centuries moving forward. And this is what will lead to, because now things is moving very much in the East India Company's favor. They build up a humongous private army and a private naval fleet, because this is still a private company. And they, of course, they use British flag, they use the British and some troops and so on. But in reality, it's a private company. This is the deal. And to make sure that this works out, there is a revival or a rewriting of laws and so on. And the East India Company, the largest private military company, is granted by Charles II, I think. I can't remember his name. In the 1630s, They make the deal, and to make sure that it works out like they want it to work out with the bureaucracy and the belief system. They are granted, besides that they can do whatever the fuck they want because the Pope is granting them that, you know, do whatever um, nefarious things with the hand of God hanging over them, or the hand of the Pope. And if there are, let me put it this way, it's really, really nefarious. If they judge there is a civilization where they enter, they have to declare war before going after them. If they judge that there is not a civilization according to, you know, the Catholic values or whatever, you can just slaughter. The subhuman thing is there already, granted by the Pope. Really nefarious. But they also get the right to mint money. And that is a crucial part of it, because then where these nefarious people will conquer and do their stuff, their evil stuff, there will also be banks formed. And these banks will become central banks down the line, all over the place, all over the place, or the globe, more or less. It's a slow process. The communications are not, but they will be there. And this is the forming of the central bank and the scam of it. It's a private company forming this. Acceleration of this will be enormous after the First World War. When the Fed is formed, that is just a stepping stone. It's a preparation. So as soon as Woodrow Wilson, getting of course the Merchant of Death Prize, the Nobel Prize, as soon as the ink on the paper where he allowed Morgan, Schiff, Warburg, and these nefarious monsters of Jekyll Island to form the Fed, you have just a very short period of time, and then the First World War is staged. It's implemented. There is actually no reason for the First World War if you look at it. There are no, so it's staged, and it's a nefarious war. It's if you look at the history, it's, well, all wars are nefarious, but that one is totally, totally nefarious in all aspects. After the First World War, there will be central banks everywhere, and of course, the instigators of this, the Wallenbergs, which is a part of all of this, a crucial part, a central part, especially after the First World War. They are not so visible before it, but as it happens, the Wallenbergs, the very, very happy father of 22, he traveled the world. He checked out the different banking systems, and then he came up with what we have today, the private banking as we see it today. Today's private banking with double bookkeeping, turning debt to assets, and the belief system around this. He checks out. He is in the U.S. when Andrew Jackson, and you have all of these banking uh, 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 fights, you could call it, and wars as well in the U.S. Uh, about the banking, because the people of 1776, they knew that they had to try as good as they could, and they tried to they really tried. They threw out the East India Company, and they tried to form a banking system for the people as good as they could. And all it went all, in the short history of the US. They tried so many ways of doing the banking to avoid being captured by what in their day was the East India Company, private banking, and so on. So this is a banking war. It's a war about the monetary system more than anything else. And all of these tryouts, which will fail, all of them actually will fail. And the final failure, it's coming from the 1871. The let's say that the coup of the constitution as such in 1871. The follow up there will be Woodrow Wilson once and for all creating the Fed, and then it's done. First World War, and the Wallenbergs create the Bank for International Settlements, the central bank of the central banks. There are central banks popping up everywhere, of course, because you need to do something that is very strange, and that is this kind of war reparations. And during that time, they will, of course, make a mess out of Germany after the First World War, create the hyperinflation, putting Germany into which really was, at that point in time, they were not really the bad boys of the First World War, but it tended to be that the narrative turned out to be that, because they wanted Germany and they wanted control over the large production capacities, the large intellectual capacity, the manufacturing. They wanted the control of Germany, which is the industrial engine of Europe at this point in time. And the Wallenbergs is very involved in the reformation of the German banking system after the First World War. They also create the Bank for International Settlements. They create the League of Nations, which today is the United Nations. They create all of these needed tools to do this. The predecessor to also to World Health Organization, the WHO, and they do all of this together with their liaisons to their allies and so on. And they also do the build-up for the Second World War. The First World War is just a stepping stone. As soon as the Bank for International Settlements is in place, they actually tried to do a coup early on with Hitler, Goering, and some other people. That fails, and it takes another decade before they can do that. To finance all of this, they are a very large part of the Bolshevik, the Social Democrat Bolshevik Revolution, also a second attempt. The kickback from the Swedish heritage Lenin, which is the primary leader at that time, is 500 tons of gold, which will be, sort of the base plate for financing the IG farm and all of these things that will happen between the wars. That is the largest gold heist in the world history, and it's seldom spoken about. They rob Russia. They simply rob everything. They rob the gold reserves. They rob the churches. They do lots of bad things. And the financiers, believe it or not, Morgan is there, Chief is there, and all of these guys. This is actually documented. And I'm not going to jump into the Zionist pot here or the Zionist bowl, but pretty much Zionist in the Bolshevik leading position. Not all of them, but 80%, something like that. And this is the build up. This is the build up for the Second World War. And of course, after the Second World War, the central banks are in place, everything is in order. Well, what do we need? Well, we need a Bretton Woods, and we need to take the power of Rothschilds and others in the city of London. We need to destroy that one. Yeah, okay, how do we do that? Yay! We use the Fed, we use the dollar instead for being the backup reserve currency for the world. We create the World Bank, sooner, very quickly, the IMF, and on top of all of this, the Bank for International Settlements will be sitting. And even so, they put an American as a front figure during the war, McKittrick. He's the protege of Wallenberg during this time. You have the Dulles, you have all the other banksters, German, American, and so on, financing all of this. There's never a halt to the Nazi bank account at Fed. It flows forth and back so much that they robbed Europe. Actually, they robbed Europe. They did some smart moves to be able to rob Europe. So at this point in time, people are getting used to central banks. They are not getting used to fiat currency because people will not buy into that. You have the Great Depression in between to soften up the American uh, public, the American people. You need to soften them up. You need to have, you know, some reason for doing this because you need to, at the same time as they kick off the Second World War project, the Nazi project, because this is the banks that's in between. Here the connections between Sweden, Germany, and the German Nazis are 100%. It's all over the place. The National Socialists, the eugenics, and so on. All of it has the starting point, just as Antifa and so on, just around the corner from the world's first central bank. You could say it's it's no long distances between where these things are invented. So while all of this is taking place, they actually try to coup a fascist coup, and Smedley Butler blows the lid on this. So you should remember that because that they really tried. They were it was pretty much the First World War veterans were starved out and so on, and they created. You can see the pattern. It's the same thing that they're doing over and over and over again. It's the central banking thing. It's the central banksters. Just look at van der Leyen trying to move the scam with war reparations. Oh, we're just gonna steal the Russians' assets, but we're not really gonna steal them. Uh, we are withholding them, and we give Ukraine, which we're you know, uh, and the kickbacks to all of the sub oligarchs, slimy people everywhere will have these large kickbacks. We just give them as a loan to Ukraine, and we will get it back when Russia pays war reparations. So this is how. And how could Russia pay war reparations? They are cut out of the system, the SWIFT system, and the central banking system. They are cut out of it. So you can see how it is a very large power to have the central banking. It's like when they steal your bank account, but they do, which they do, debanking. That's not the new word. It happened to a lot of American people that have raised their voices and so on. But you do it to a whole nation instead, and that has, of course, larger consequences than for individuals. But it's all about just stealing and control. It's all about that, and the belief system here. We believe in their monetary system because we don't have any other, but we still believe in it. If we don't believe in it, we will find other ways to do it. We need, and the young people that they probably, hopefully, have a pretty good idea about this at this point in time. So now I'm being long-winded. This is almost an hour, but I think that if we can look at this, all of these patterns, all of these recognitions, without being going into much detail, which I hopefully have not done, to keep this moving forward. If we look at this situation that we are in, it's a straight line. It is really a straight line moving rearwards in history. So we are at the past proves future and future proves past. And of course, this is the warning flag because to be able to, because this system this time has survived from wars, fertilizer, which has increased the world's population by 4.5 times since Bretton Woods to keep feeding this system. This system is now a dead horse, or almost a dead horse, that is giving some, or given some adrenaline shots to keep the heart pounding 1 year at a time, you could say, or whatever how you want to see it. The debt saturation is so overwhelming since the fiat currency occurred after the Nixon letting the gold standard go. And actually, that has been tried by the world's first central bank as early as in 1930. They did that. They experimented with that. That is a crucial part of banking history. And they actually made it work as a belief system as well. And then you have the predecessor to what will happen 40 years later. It's the world's first central bank is the world's first central bank, and it's not going away. And it's getting old now, 1668. That's some time ago. So with that, almost 1 hour. I cut it short, 3 minutes. Hopefully, this will give an indication for where we are, because we need to have war to, in a trustworthy manner, for the people to still believe in this system. We need a wars to go to war economy, and this is what the actors, the European Union slime, the slimy Congress, the slimy politicians all over the world, all over the Western world, the NATO people, everybody of this nefarious theater slime is shouting the same thing. We need a war economy. They say it in a little bit different ways and so on. And to go to a war economy, you will have to, if you don't have an enemy that really is not the enemy, that will not don't have the capability or the wish in any way, shape, or form to invade Europe or to attack Europe or whatever. uh, You still have to make Russia the big bad. You have to provoke, you have to paint that picture for the people to believe in going into a war economy. It's and the acts they are playing now is so over the top. It's silly with these drones and with they are grasping after the smallest thing to try to make it a big thing and make people scared. And as I see it, the young generations they are not really. I think they have quite a different opinion towards this than most of the boomers and the silent older generations and so on that are afraid there are some people that really think that we you know that Russia wants to occupy our countries and make us all speak Russian and so on. It's beyond stupid now the what we hear and so on. But as said, the central banking system, the fiat currency coming out of that central banking system, that will hit US pretty hard because US have, with the Fed, have been the blow off valve for all of these activities. And of course, the dollar and the Fed as such has been controlling up to some few years ago all trade, enforcing the trade to be in dollars, and that era is over. That empire is gone. It's never coming back. I can guarantee you that. And the age of central banks in the way, shape, and form that they are now uh, run more or less by the private banksters. The shape of them have been not for the Fed. That doesn't go for the Fed, but and it for sure not go for the BIS or the European Union Central Bank, the EIC. It doesn't go for them, but for the nation's central banks, they are put between a rock and a hard place because they have no option but to just to push the bottom or to put the stamp on what the private banks are doing. And the private banks, the way, shape, and form they are working in is also, as I said, 1856. André Oscar, the happy, the proud father of 22. That is his thinking, his setup as well. That goes hand in hand. And this is where we are, but it's all a Ponzi scheme. And it's a belief system that probably will end up in a very bad space right now or in a very bad spot. It, hopefully enough people will realize this and rise up to the task. Okay, 2 minutes over instead. Sorry about that. Brian, go ahead. Now I've been ranting for so long that I have to take a little break.
Yes, sir. Please get you some water right quick. Clear your throat and just be prepared to come right back. Couple of questions there. I'm just going to throw out here a few thoughts for the listeners and to you also. Um, from the way that I understood it as a boy coming up, some of the stories that I was told, the best way to portray this, in my opinion, humbly, being primitive as it was back then. The Vikings believed in earth, wind, and water. The basic elements that they had. That's what they worshiped. That's what they conquered. That's what they went after. Earth, wind, and water. And they knew that those three things created two things out of it: fire and ice. Out of earth, wind, and water, they create fire and ice. That is the same for the people that they were brewing, their own people, the Viking people. They did not want to trade amongst themselves because they knew commerce, they knew the system they were developing, and they wanted everyone else to serve it to them. So, to get everyone on board, they sent the Vikings out as fire and ice clashing. The wars they've seen, they conquered many. And to the point, they conquered so many that they got tired in their journeys also. Their voyages would be so long that people would change because they would grow their own people, take people. By the time they came back, if any of them got to go back, they didn't look the same when they showed back up. There was very few of them that were of the old guard that originally went out. Some of them might even have stayed in the places that they conquered, and they grew attached to them in certain ways. So, as you were saying, Russia to Britain um to the cross, the skull and bones, okay, to the pirates, to the Vikings. They had to go out because they told them, they pulled them aside. You said yourself, and they showed them that they were another sect of them, maybe even an older
Yeah.
sect, maybe even sect that set them out to do what they were doing. And every once in a while, they've got to come around and remind them of their place because of the spreading
Of
out.
their loyalty, the loyalty.
Right.
They always left people, like Alexander the Great. He left his people, soldiers and other at the different places he conquered. There are some really good stories about that, actually, that still is valid. But they left people to control waterways and so on. You have villages in Ukraine. You have the last place that they actually spoke Viking, which was an isolated place. It's on the Crimea island in the Black Sea. It, it's it's unbelievable that, but that's the way it is. That's the last place where they still stuck with the old Viking language. So of course, and if you check this village out, which is have been hit by the special military operation in Ukraine called Gammel Svensk By, that is on the very narrowest, easiest to control place of the Dnieper. Just a small, not a very long way from the Black Sea up there, so you can control anybody coming down the Dnieper that was going to the Black Sea, to going to the Bosphorus, to going down to the Ottoman Empire and so on, to trade there. They were really efficient in this, and they always left their loyal people, and they were, well, maybe not untouchable, but the farmers and everybody around, they knew who was there and why they were there, and as long as peace was kept, I think people were pretty happy. They were much more tradesmen, but they could also, just as you say, they did, but they were very good at information as well. They spread the rumor about, slave, Slav. That's not the Viking word for it, but that's the word that we use now. They were also, of course, slave traders. Because the people that they took for that was of the Slavic people, uh, as well. So we should remember that that's the origin of the first time we know Western slave trade. Way down east, it's another, but it was there already. Of course, the Viking word for it is träl, just to confuse, but could be good to know. So yeah, they left. They did exactly what Alexander the Great did. He left people behind, or not behind, but amongst them, and he even encouraged to marry into uh, 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 the the population at the place where and so on. That was giving bonuses and so on if you did that, then you know um, as a wise emperor, he did that. The Vikings, of course, they had the same kind of system because they needed to have people in place, and of course, people will, belonging for their families and so on. But they were also very, you know, they didn't travel long, and sometimes they sent after they were very good at traveling. We think that we are travel by jets and by train and by that we travel. Of course, they had it took them a little bit longer, but they were pretty quick to get around Europe and the Mediterranean and so on and so forth. It was not a big deal for these guys and their ships at that time. So that's how you build up this kind of system, that trade system that will
I mean,
very quickly, very quickly
just
evolve to the minting of money.
exactly. And I was, and to spot touch on that. When I was a boy growing up, and I think all of you might catch on to what I'm about to say here, but the RGB, and it's put in that order for a reason: the red, green, blue. And if you know what I'm talking about, the spectrum scale of coloring and light. All right. And they
Yep.
saw those three colors a stream. So I was taught this when I was a boy in elementary school, which geared us up for the Viking manner of thinking in their direction of currency flow, how things actually worked. And that went across all spectrums. Signal was the biggest one of them. And they drew signal, the North and South poles. They knew all of this science. They knew a lot of science. Their people did many different things, especially look at the stars. Also, they had their own types of Sadducees and soothsayers, like what the Bible explains, but the red, green, and blue became the alliances, the three major brands. We see them working now, even today, the red being the power of it, the military, the strong backing, that is first, because if the other two fail or get behind, that's what kicks in to help them out. So the green and the blue are to work together. Yeah.
Yeah, and coming to the current, the currency, the flow of a river, the banks, the river banks. Um, you know,
Right. Which produced the data bricks that we see today emerging. They call them now the eagle economies. We see what they've done out of the Nordic countries from all around the Romanian Empire, Italy, and all Austrian, the many different ways they branched out. They didn't expect them to stay. They were to keep moving, but they did agree with their own people that some of them were tired, and many of them had to be laid to rest on the grounds where they were slaughtered, their own people even. So those things became issue, and the rule of law and merit became over the sea and the water, and they took to the sky, which became what's known as our today in the United States Raytheon, and they control those three things. Note, so it's a branch of the Russian Empire, of the British Empire. They're all in league, and we're waking up to that. We're really finding that out. As much as that looked like they were all against each other, battling each other steady, the battle was to make them spread out, to conquer more, to gain the hearts and minds of those around them that they were either helping or hurting. And both of those things mattered because they did a bit of both everywhere they went, and that mattered. And today we see the Wagner Group working in many different fashions. You said, well, the Bolshevik revolution, the Zionism, that we won't go into that, but that speaks volumes if anybody is, hears, takes it deeply. But these three, if you look on the German Empire, the shield, it's 3 points at the top with the panther on it. So the 3 points on the top are what's prime for them. Those three alliances always remain the three crowns. You mentioned the symbolism. It just circles around and around. We even see it in today's symbolism, which is reflective
Yeah,
of Russia's power. The German, the Nazi, the pirate power of law and merit now moving forward. This is because they chose to be the best at it. Whatever it was,
yeah,
had to control it. Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
And of course, the natural resources of Russia is the you know that is the trouble. The cousin that doesn't want the cousin that wants to trade, and these guys the the technocrats and oligarchs of the West today, they simply want to to try to do a color revolution in Russia, whatever it costs. They can't beat them militarily, not anymore. There's no option, and so they have to make it by one of the standard color revolutions, which doesn't seem to work on the Russians. Well, it for sure will not work at the Chinese, and the Chinese and Russia's and the BRICS countries. They have said enough with this. We had enough, and they have, you know, the first signs of this is when they are pulling, putting down their own Atlantic cables, and this is in 2013, 2014. I've been writing about it. It's a very, very, very statement that this is something going on here that will shift the power balance in the world. The the technocrat run U.S. hegemony. The people are just blaming the U.S., but that's it's a coalition. It's a coalition of technocrats in Europe and U.S. and some other countries. Um,
Like today, yesterday, and this past week, just quickly, I'm going to throw this in there. But the visa program that they started through the law to help things out, they struck down today or the past few days, and he's put out $100,000 penalty on that, which has got them all scrambling to get back to their country. Or so we're going to see how this shift actually goes. Did you
the
see that?
famous H1B, yeah, the famous
Yeah.
H1B, and
Wow.
an American company is they will have to put up like $1 million for getting headhunted people in. They have to do
Well,
scrutineering
if you
and so on
remember,
and so forth.
well, just a moment. If you remember back in the 90s when Clinton done the NAFTA and TAFTA agreements, okay, he can't do that again because we all seen what it done and what it's done for the last 20 years. It had to be rebranded. So he's pushed the technocrats, he's pushed the tech companies out of the U.S. and has demanded a at least half reduction in the American workforce, meaning the American people, not the foreigners that may or may not come and go. So now it'll be all service based, and will they will oversee us and he's making it look like we'll oversee them. Sort of the back and forth pitch, throwing it the other way, but it's not exactly going to be that way. Can you elaborate maybe on this a little bit? Because It's absolutely crucial to understand what he just did.
Yeah,
Basically, he
it, it,
reconverted
it,
the NAFTA and PAFTA. Go ahead.
it for sure will change the opportunities for work for the general public. It for sure will change it quite heavily over time. This doesn't happen overnight, but it for sure will change the opportunities for a U.S. citizen and for just ordinary work, manufacturing, or services, restaurants, and so on. It will change quite heavily because mm,
They
if
threw
you
up
check
just while
that,
while you're
that's
collecting your
that,
thoughts
that's
there. The Go ahead. Okay.
there are there are if we look at I've actually read up on this a little bit. So if we look at ownership and the country of origin being and many not being U.S. citizens even, if you look at the service sector such as petrol stations, hotels, uh, smaller businesses, uh, it's been quite astonishing to see that there are no very few U.S. citizens actually that are uh, uh, well, very few, I wouldn't say, but the amount of foreigners running businesses in the United States is quite amazing actually how that could have worked out even. Um, I don't know exactly how the citizenships and so on, the time of those and so on before you can be a citizen. But for sure you can start businesses and so on without being a citizen. That doesn't seem to be a problem at all. So it's strange, but this will turn things around quite a bit, especially for the tech or engineering companies and so on. It's quite amazing that this is brought to the table, and this was effective straight away as well. So this is going to I don't know the I don't know how the ice or whatever who's gonna handle this, how they are gonna do it, how people that will be affected by this. It's millions of people. So it's
Yes, millions of people. Um,
yeah.
to put it
So
simply, well, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
no. Go ahead.
Well, just to put it simply, pushing them out this way, and think about it this way, even if it doesn't appear as such now, with the announcements that he's fixing to make, with the way that he's fixing to handle the pharmaceuticals, the corporations, and deal with them. Now it'll be the best of the best being pushed out of the country. They'll build corporation cities in other nations, and they'll be catered to towards us. See, the ancient holy scriptures tells us that the truth, when the new mystery Babylon rises up, it will rise up to accuse a nation. Now, the truth is going to settle down in the middle of that nation. And the scriptures tell us that it's going to call all men unto it to try them. To try who? To try what? Here, us. And they're going to come with vengeance, with fury, um, and from abroad, from far, which is going to cause a major currency disruption and flowability disruption in the middle of our happenings here in the States, I believe. Um,
Pretty profound,
Sort of
isn't
what
it?
I was saying. Yeah, sort of what I was saying from to begin with. It's like cutting off the main artery, pulling the strings on a main artery in one of the legs and one of the arms. or you could call it both the legs, but that's what they just did. We're going to see just how that works out because, yeah, it's going to affect millions and millions. Yeah.
But on the other hand, there are so many bright and brilliant people in the US. So maybe it just will fill up automatically by itself in sort of a new era. That is also a possibility of a new era but first and foremost, I'm very, very worried and uncomfortable with that there will be more war. The Iran war is just paused. Uh, I wonder what it will be like. We have this new era of decapitation, uh, strikes on civilians as well. The old set of rules. We are going from. There's no possibility for NATO and or US to do whatever with the conventional war with boots on the ground and so on. That's not the option uh, at all when it comes to China, Russia, even Iran. It's not possible. The resources are not there, so that will not happen. So there will be missile war, decapitation, dirty war, assassinations. There will be all kinds of nefarious things going on. It, we will call it war, but it will not be, this kind of boots on the ground war. It will be air, it will be missiles. Um, it's uh, it's a kind of a new era. There will be.
It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a little bit of a mess. Did you see? Here's one heads up display. I can tell you for certain. If you were reading the daily papers that come out, the daily articles that are coming out, they suggest that Palantir, the first contracts you remember I told you about, they took with PwC across the pond. Now they've taken a huge contract with the militaries, and
Yeah, I
so
heard.
Europe is fixing to get stalker drones. Europe is fixing to get stalker drones for their citizenry and to just watch over things. They'll be called sentinels soon enough. And we'll probably get our first showing of them here soon enough also. Go ahead, let's talk about it.
That's pretty close to Terminator, isn't it? But uh,
Well, China did actually launch Skynet.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
they
we
have.
know about that.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, we have so the surveillance. The technocracy is here, as predicted, in a 100-year-old book called the Kalegi Plan, which is. Well, we might not go into that, but all the boxes are ticked in, and people in many cases they're just saying, "Oh, that's just conspiracy theories. It's just bullshit." And you can actually just pick it up because that's sort of the framework, the manual that the technocrats are working within, for sure, because it checks all the boxes, totally, totally all the boxes. The 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 exchange of people or the mass migration, call it what you want. It's all more or less in detail described there, and this is also one of the banksters things to keep. That adrenaline shot is fading out now in the horse, but the mass migration will create more debt and keep the wheels spinning a little longer, a little longer, a little longer, because you are down to that kind of moves now to keep this cycle of monetary running. This is the longest cycle ever run, ever, ever, by far. Back in the day, a local king or whatever, they could do their banking stuff for 7 years around that before they had to write off all debts and just go to a new cycle, make something up and whatever, and go to a new cycle. If people bought it, no problem. If people didn't buy it, you would have a you know uprising or something like that. Then what do you do? Then I go to war with my neighboring king or neighboring hood, and then I can write up the debts, and the banksters, hanging around, will do the same later on, closing in on the past the dark ages. uh, the cycle was prolonged by information, by actually by the printing press being invented. So and the church starting to dominate, you know, then you could prolong that cycle to once every man's age, which meant sort of 35, 40 years, 47 years is actually a number being handed out, but let's say 40 years before doing a complete debt write-off with the war, as usual, as an excuse, because the war is also beneficial for the banksters, and you invent these kind of war reparations and so on that will come a little bit later on. But this cycle has been going on since Bretton Woods, and that's eight. What will be 60? That's on. That's 80 years ago. 80 years.
Yeah.
One
That's about
cycle.
right.
That's about right. That's actually this year. It's 80 years. The Carnegie Plan is 100
And
years,
yeah, it's
and
100 and
the debt saturation, Brian. The debt saturation is out of the scale. It is out of the scale. So
it's gotten, yeah, it's way off the scale. They had to start converting their debt equity into currency also. That's just
yeah,
how bad it's gotten. And
yeah,
this 100 years from let's say from Mark 1920, and we could go from 1900 to 2000, and that marked the grade. It took them 20 years to get things going, to get the papers passed out to all. So from 1920 to 2020, they have figured in, and this time they think they've got it down so good, this pattern system of 100-year triumph, 100, that they've upped the scale to 140 years, 120 years basically, with a 20-year grace period. That's what they've got on Bitcoin, its cycle. I
yeah,
think it's they rounded the math out to about 140 years. Yeah.
yeah, but I don't think it's gonna work this time. People cannot be this stupid that they buy into it again. The young generation, please, 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 don't buy into it. But
Oh, mercy, mercy. How many times have we been over this, Mr. Mott? This is,
yeah,
it's, yes, sir. Go ahead.
we see the opportunities coming now when entering a phase of a sort of a stealthy war economy. That they don't really put it straight out, but you can see these euro bonds, sorry, bonds, and the same thing will occur in the US and in the Western countries. It just will follow that pattern, and of course then you inject more fiat ex nihilo, created out of thin air, fiat money into the system, and try to keep the well, if you just hide the numbers of hyperinflation, and pretend it's not there, people is not going to notice. They will see prices go up and so on. But as long as you can keep that a bit under control, people will be happy, and the wheels of the economy will start spinning again, because the manufacturing base will, you know, be rolling and sub suppliers and so on, and all of this will be rolling under a smoke and mirrored war economy to keep people, uh, sort of patriotic, and believing that Russia will occupy Europe, and the China will attack the US, or whatever they will come up with. But to
Or there's just the theory. Just let me throw this out there quickly, and I really don't like cutting you off like that, but you're spot on there in what you're saying, and I think it actually translates to they took the theater of war and they turned it into game theory and sped up the process to the technocrats where we see them going now. And because they game theoried it and put AI in the mix, they sped it up even faster, which they can't even tell how much of a problem it's going to be or if this will just flow. I think they're hoping that we're taking the curve without losing control, but they're also pacing our speed. We've done this so fast, the warp speed, in my opinion, the fast tracking of engineers. We, I think, in my opinion, now anybody can knock me down for this, and that's fine. But I think we shorted, and they in this race shorted themselves, where I think even they were gypped out of it because they wanted to stretch this out a lot longer. And you've heard me say that before too, also. Even with the system of pencil and paper, this digital wave system that's coming in, they wanted to stretch it out and make it a lot longer to do these processes, but they game theoried it, took war off the table, and they decided to play a game for a little while. And that sped up the process tremendously because they liked what they were doing. Can we agree with that? And that's turned into chaos.
yeah, I think people
Almost
understand.
like we're battling a people way ahead of us. Would you say that?
Yeah. Of course, there. I mean, the planning departments, for the oligarchs, they are way ahead. Of course, I've heard one of the Wallenberg say that. Well, you know, he was asked the question, "How do you see the next 5 years on television?" And he just smiled at the bimbo asking that question and said, "Please, we plan 105 years at least forward, not 5 years." And he just laughed and went on his way. So I mean, these people, of course, they have the long time plan, and with options and so on. But nevertheless, I will quote Mr. Ford here, as I've done many times. If people actually understand or realize the monetary system, there will be a revolution in the morning, and it's over with it. Sort of that the loose, a very loose quote there, but
And well, no, you're right. And basically, that's the same thing that I was saying. It seems that they have played this out in such a way that um, they gamed it way too fast. They gamed it way too fast. They didn't want it to game too fast, but because it took the turn of events that it has, now what I mean by we're battling a people that's way ahead of us. Let's say they're 200. They're all already some people, some small places like these data banks where they hold most of the information, the learned ones, the ones that are more learned than many of us. Let's say that, okay, let's say they're already living as though they're 200 years ahead of us, or 150 years, as though they're already across that rubric, okay, of where they stand at in documentation. At what point have they realized that getting that far ahead of us has caused such a gap between us that now it demands to go back to theater, actual theater, instead of gaming it? Ouch.
Yeah, yeah,
See what I
yeah.
mean? Okay.
I think actually the development, especially from China, and the clarities from the Russians. The Russians are actually doing something that is well, they sort of play along a little bit, but they also choose not to play the game when it comes to let's call it to the rhetorical stuff and so on. They refuse to play the game, and they simply grind uh, forward, and that has, you know, changed the path that were uh, wished for or planned for. I think the moves from the Russians actually turned it upside down, and the BRICS countries and so on. Uh, Many leaders of many countries and nations are, you know, setting the foot down and actually try some some actually are trying to do something that seems to be logical and reasonable for their people, and that turned, you know, this is sort of what Tolkien is talking about. You know, if you are blinded by the monetary system, if you are blinded by the Silmarillions, like the dragon, you know, well, if you are blinded by that, you will never see what is coming. But if you are not blinded by that, and you take another path, um, you will be able to change what is happening, and I think that many people are actually doing that on a geopolitical scale as well. So that is sort of the upside of where we are today, that we can see the positive things in humanity coming out both here and there, and on a individual basis. Um, I think actually that the younger generations, they are not running for the monetary as much as the you know, boomers, and they don't, they care about other things. They care about people, they care about relations, they care about other things. Um, in different ways, but there is something that will sort of unite the younger people, regardless if they are conservative or woke or whatever. There are some strings coming together there that probably and hopefully will turn out to be good at the end of this. But we are still not over we are not over we are not over the top. Oh, sorry, we are not over the hill yet. Uh, but as far as I can see it, understanding the fiat currencies, the debt saturation, the Ponzi scheme that private banks and central banks are driving, I think enough people but are starting to see through that, and that's why we have this birthday celebration for the first central bank. It's just to make a kind of a statement from a historical point of view of how many centuries this has been going on one way or the other, and developed into as said in the headline of the space, this is the world's largest scam, or call it a Ponzi scheme, ever. There's nothing that even is close to it. It's a belief system stronger than any religion that anybody ever have spread or put their faith to, because this is a forced belief system, and it's so hard for people when they have been forced into it to get out of it. It's um, it's it's very well executed, but nevertheless,
Oh,
it is
yeah.
it is a
Well,
it's a smoke and mirror fake Ponzi scheme.
let me bring it back for you one time. I'm going to throw this. You'll remember it right away. I think you're spot on with it, and I think it goes back to branding the first original title that I remember us having space on. When you'd done a history space on it, you started out. If you remember it, you titled it "The Wire," and that came in three parts. The Wire was in the power, the medical, and there was something else you threw in there, and I described it as the telephone lines and communication. I think that's what it was: communication, health, telecommunication, the healthcare, and that. But we described it as the three-phase line. You remember the wire? That's the
Yeah, yeah,
top
yeah, yeah, yeah.
priority. It's on top of the right, and everything else is below the neutral. Phone lines, communicate, etc. Yes, I like the way that you branded it the
I,
first time when we talked
yeah,
about it, and good job.
yeah, yeah. We had that discussion, and it is actually, and through it, the currency flows, both the electrical and the monetary currency, and it's called currency for a reason. And this is the it's a good way of describing it. I think we can sort of redo that. Maybe make a video. I don't know. Um, I- Hopefully, now we've been going at this for 2 hours, so I think we'll be rounding it up here. Hopefully, there's been some interesting things for many of you guys. This is sort of a repetition, but that's the mother of learning, isn't it? And understanding, to get maybe some new perspectives, maybe get some new angles, how to look at these nefarious games that have been put onto to us and our ancestors for generations. The simple fact is what it is. What it is. I mean, the fertilizer, the quadrupling or even more of the world population to keep driving this system. And now we see a decline in this, especially in the West, for many reasons. The vaccine, the COVID vax is one of them. That was obvious that would be like not very good for the 2.1 children needed to keep the civilization going and so on. We see a decline in that, and that will fit perfectly into the exchange of people according to the inverted eugenics, which is inverted eugenics. As we believe eugenics to be like, yay, the Aryan race is above all others and so on. That's sort of the eugenics that we are fed with, grown up with, and so on. Uh, but for sure, that
Well,
makes a very
Mr. Mr. Jim O'Neill has rebranded that force, hadn't he? From the eugenics projects, we now have the rejuvenation projects since they think they've got the keys.
yeah.
Man, that warp speed, these spike proteins, the three Google scientists that won the Nobel Prize for medicine, the 200 million proteins that they've discovered. Wow.
yeah, and
That's
of course the
that.
merchant of
Yeah.
price on top of that. So I mean, we can see this. If you want to look at it from a perspective of really long time planning, and also sort of written down in the manual framework, or the instruction book, the framework for this, we, we, we are at at Airgenix 2.0, which is a slow burn of creating a master race again and a subordinate servant race. But this time it's the opposite way around. And I think that the last project, maybe it was intended to just create the growing ground, the narrative for where we are today. But for sure, it is happening. There's no doubt about that. Um, and if and the narrative has been very, very, very strong from the Second World War and forward. It was strong before, but from that point on, in good timing with the Bretton Woods, with the fertilizer, with the very steep increase of the world population. Th-
They took a
That
huge speed leap forward in medicine with the birth control pill, with controlled environments again. Germany at one time, they when they stepped in and removed the patents from them, they were begging for new facilities and clean facilities, and the refresh of the buildings, they destroyed just about everything, didn't they?
that was
Man, what a
brewing.
time.
So yeah, all of this, if we look at in the numbers, and of course included in the numbers is the central banks popping up and so on. To be able to do this, you need to have that kind of infrastructure in place. You need to have the fertilizer up and running, being produced everywhere, and so on. So without those prerequisites, this had it had been impossible to do the financial Ponzi scheme that we are in. But of course, with the long time planning, and if it is what the numbers say, with the mass migration, the people reduction, and so on, we can see it's quite clear what is happening. But as I said, it's a slow burner, it's a slow cooked frog, so to speak. But still, it's happening. If you deny that, um, if people denies that, it's because that they are short-sighted. They are not looking forward. It is happening, and what else is happening is that this kind of debt saturation will drive us into war economies, or let's say some smoke and mirror war economies, and we will have a write off of a write off of the debt. The, that
No, no,
that
no, no. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Let's stop that. And
what,
I think Trump is trying to stop that also. No more smoke and mirrors. I think we all want the truth, and I think he wants us all to have it. And I think that that's going to be the thing that actually pulls the trigger because it's
that,
being
that,
demanded. Yeah.
that might happen, and then my quote from Mr. Ford earlier will be very, very up to date, so to speak. Um, I'm setting my hope to the young generation that they grasp this but they grasp the Ponzi scheme and refuse to play that game. As soon as enough people refuse to play that game, to be a part of that belief system, things will change very rapidly. That's my point of view. But it has to come from some kind of enlightenment, some some knowledge, understanding, simply grasping the way that this scam has been pulled off. And if you understand it, you will not fall for it. When we reach critical mass at that point, there will be some there will be some kind of revolution. It might not be even it might just be that it doesn't have to be violent. There will of course be some violence, that's always, but it doesn't really have to be that. It simply it simply have to be that people refuse to play that game. Enough people, and then it will stop. It will come to a very quick stop when the belief system is wrecked in the curve that you're talking about. The kind of curve that it's impossible to handle the race car, so to speak, which might be the situation. Well, we have to see, but knowing how it was built up, knowing the belief system in function, and I think after this space, hopefully some people at least listening into this have gotten something to think about and something to talk about with their friends and so on. I hope so. We have a speaker. We have a new speaker. Oh, I've seen you before. Well, that's the last thing that's going to happen. Brian, thank you for today. And we let Alien Light in for